The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to Aging Like a Badass. I'm Kimberly Price, your 40-something host, and I'm on a mission to create the trusted spaces to help you navigate life's wrinkles. Hide from uncomfortable conversations? Not a chance. The raw and real is the rocket fuel that ignites change, and there is no better time than the present to excavate the messy and activate your inner superpower to create a life you love. So stick around and get ready to learn the tips, tricks, and truths to age like a badass, because wrinkles aren't the problem, they're the solution. Welcome back to Aging Like a Badass. We are live in the studio, not just on audio, but on video, and I am so excited. Today's episode, we are talking about where the courage to release meets the strength to embrace. And I am here with special guest, Dimple Auro. I am so excited that you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. There's just so much impact that can happen when we get together in conversation. So like we talked about before, this is you and I sitting in a living room having a conversation together, even though you're up in Canada and I'm here in Des Moines, Iowa. That's the great thing about being able to use the technology that we have today to have these conversations. So
it's so fascinating.
Yes, it is. We've come a long way just in a few short years.
Absolutely.
So I would love for you to share a little bit, just brief bio, who you are and what you do. And then I want to dive into a little bit of your story, what you're doing in the world to make an impact. And I get to share a lot of things that I got to learn about you in our conversation. So I'm excited.
Well, thank you. So I am the founder of Mindful Evolution, and it's a mindful parenting movement to create the empowered family. So I work primarily with moms and their teen daughters, and I take a holistic approach in my practice to help them improve their mindset, process their unresolved emotions, and heal their physical body so they can optimize their physical health. And so it's in order to empower women to be able to heal the mother so that we can create an empowered environment.
That is powerful. And that was one of the most interesting things when we were having our conversation. You know, teens in the world today, they need so much support. And there are so many different areas of their lives that I feel like, you know, I'm going to say a couple decades ago when I was a teenager, not that I didn't need support, but the world was a lot different. And I really, I'm excited to go a little deeper in that and the things that you're doing to impact.
Thank
you. You also have been part of a book.
Mm-hmm.
So share a little bit about that.
Oh, the book was such a wonderful project. I had put it in my mind about 4 days before the ad came out that I was like, you know what? I need to be an author. I used to love to write my entire life. I used to write poetry when I was younger. I actually wanted to be a journalist at one point. So I had this thought, and 4 days later, I see this ad on the internet, and it's created by a woman, Crystal Andrus Morissette, who's the founder of the SWAT Institute, which is the largest coaching institute for women to make them accredited life coaches, empowerment coaches in the world. And I had been following her for years. So I was really excited to apply to be in her book called Simply Woman. 30 stories from magnificent women who have risen against the odds. And I felt like, you know what, sharing my story it was time to share my story, to release it, and to have that opportunity to empower other women through my story and to get my message out to the world. So I was very excited about that. I applied, and myself, along with Crystal and 28 other women, we shared our stories in the book. And it became a bestseller, international bestseller, women from all around the world. It was a beautiful project.
So I want to dive a little, and you're going to hear my dog. He's scratching at the door. He wants to come in to my office, but if I let him in, he's going to bark. So I want to talk a little bit about your story. And that's why I asked the question about the book, because you have a really powerful story. And, part of the title today is in this, when we come from a place of, releasing, we all have struggles in life. We all have things that we're up against, and those can come and go. Those can, take up years of our life. And it's how we handle those things as they come, because we know that in life, we're always going to have them. And so I would love to dive into a little bit of your story and what brought you to the place now where you're working with women, you're working with teens, you're doing all of these things in the world in a holistic approach to really helping women heal not just their physical bodies, but their minds and their souls, the whole person. And so let's talk about that.
Absolutely. It really is a journey of the whole person. I was born and raised in Canada to immigrant parents. And for the first 10 years of my life, I literally vomited every single meal. So it was frustrating for my parents who were trying to make a living here, trying to support their families back home. They were in survival mode. So it was very stressful for them having me as the oldest of three siblings, and always having some health issues. So I was the kid with the eczema, the allergies, the bronchitis, the ear infections. And I was constantly shifted from medical doctor to medical doctor, and nobody could figure out what was going on with me. So I was constantly on some type of medication, some type of steroid, an antibiotic, whatever it was that was ailing me at the time in order to help me to manage. At the same time, I was thriving in school. I was a social butterfly, but always struggling with my health. By the time I became a teenager, it was frequent sinus infections, frequent throat infections, urine infections. And so when I got into my 20s and I went to university, I was living in a very imbalanced body. And I had also grown up in a very dysfunctional environment. And I do have a great relationship with my parents now, which we'll get into as well. But it was just not conducive to raising a healthy, vibrant person. So when I got into my 20s, I was then experiencing chronic colds, chronic yeast infections every month, complete mood dysregulation. There were so many aspects to the puzzle, and my symptoms were just ongoing. And that's just the way I had lived my entire life. So I would go to the doctor, get another prescription, fill it, get over that ailment, then the next one would come on. So constantly my immune system was just battling something. And by that time, when I was in my 20s, I then had a sugar addiction, a binge eating problem, a addiction to prescription drugs, and my body was completely out of balance. I graduated from university, worked in IT, went on to be a high school math teacher. On my last day of teaching, I collapsed in the staff room. So my body just gave up on me at that point. I had a broken mind, broken body, and honestly, my spirit was just extraordinarily torn and assaulted at that point. And that's when I started the amazing healing journey that I went on to heal myself. And really, it's really take on an entire new identity than what I was growing up.
So what do you think in the moment that, for me, it was my cancer diagnosis. It was getting the phone call and hearing those words. And I would say not everyone has a moment where they just know that they're going to choose this life and or that life. That was my moment What was that moment like for you? Did it happen in an instant where you knew, okay, something has to change? You woke up the next day, the light turned on, and you started that journey? Or was there a period of time after the collapse that it took you sort of an awakening, a slower awakening of self?
Wow, there's so many layers to it, and I know that you understand this.
Yeah.
There was some pivotal moments, but it was this continued journey, which I'm so absolutely grateful for now that I look back. But there was a pivotal moment for me one night when I was home alone. So my husband used to, like, he works in corporate, and at that time we were young and, you know, starting out in our careers, and he was climbing the corporate ladder. So I was always home alone. So he would leave early in the morning, come back late at night, and I remember there was a point where I had suffered from so many menstrual symptoms. So PMDD. So right before my cycle started, I felt like life was over, life was ending, everything was going wrong, you know. And so there was a night where I was home alone. I started crying in the shower because I was at that point diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which was chronic pain, tons of symptoms, and not that much that doctors could do for me. So I started crying in the shower because the water, the pins and needles from the water was hurting my skin so much.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I just fell and collapsed in the shower in so much grief and so much distress. And I realized at that moment that there was no one coming to save me. Although I had amazing friendships, amazing husband, amazing relationships around me, there was nobody. And I thought, you know what? It's me, myself, and I. And I don't want to live like this. I can't accept that this is my life. And at that night, honestly, I was having suicidal thoughts. And I decided that no, my life is so worth it. And I grew up with a lot of faith. So I feel like that really helped.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to make a decision to heal and change my life in that moment. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I decided I was going to do it.
That's interesting because I always, I've talked about this several times that it's the yes that has to happen first. Yeah. We have to get to that place where we're willing to almost in surrender, right? That we say, yes, I don't want to do this anymore, but I'm going to say yes to something I don't even know exists in the future, but I just know that I want it. So I'm going to get up the next day and I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to put that one foot in front of the other in discovery of, okay, what's next?
Yes, you hit the nail on the head there. And you do need a big why. So my why at that time, my motivation was to become a mother. And it wasn't about the fertility aspect. It was about the aspect of being healthy enough to raise an empowered, healthy, resilient child. And I had decided before I even conceived my daughter that I wanted to raise my child with love, with respect, with compassion, and with wisdom. And in order to do that, I really wanted to have not only a healthy body, but a healthy mind and a healthy emotional state. And I wanted to have a regulated nervous system and just all the things that were necessary to raise a child, because I started thinking to myself, what if we had children that didn't experience trauma or didn't experience things that were going to move them away from their true essence? And I kind of wanted to have it as an experiment, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, what I love about this, and when we had our conversation last week, I felt it again in here when you talked about it. And I'm not probably gonna use the right words here, but there was this, so one, admiration. And I just admire your awareness in prior to having kids, wanting to think all the way, essentially to this preconception, mindset, embodiment of what am I going to give to this life that I'm going to create. And then as, this egg grows and, develops, and it's not just once they're out, we're going to start, it's everything before it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in addition to admiration, there was a little bit of feeling of loss because I wasn't there. I had grown up knowing I'd always loved children. I'd always been around a lot of kids, and I just knew I wanted to be a mom. And I would say that consciously, I always said, I want to do better than my parents have done. Not that my parents have done a bad job. They're human, right? They're going to make mistakes, but there was never a level at that time in my life of knowing that I could really consciously create these little beings in the right space. And there's no right and wrong at all in it. But I think for those that are listening that are younger or haven't had children yet, what an opportunity to listen in and share and, explore some of the things that you've done, because it can make the world of difference in not having to go backwards and reteaching my kids things that maybe had I had the mindset earlier in my life, I could have taught them long before now.
Yeah. Yes, it's really an amazing process to be able to have a conscious conception and then a conscious raising of your child from the moments they come out of the womb.
Yeah.
And I remember there were certain moments when my daughter was born that I was very intentional about. I did certain things, like I delayed her cord cutting. I wanted to make sure that I gave her the skin to skin contact right away. And to be honest, all of these things kind of came intuitively. And that's when I decided that I was going to parent intuitively. So when I was tuned into myself, that I could also tune into my child. So it was that whole idea of the more that we were just calm, relaxed, regulated, then we can have the ability to tune in to our child's needs without pushing anything onto them or forcing them to be a certain way. Or it was almost like letting the child lead and not me being the teacher, but letting the child be my teacher. That's the way I approached it.
I love that. I love that. And, I want to just echo for, anyone that's listening, that don't get caught in what you haven't done. There's always the opportunity to rise to where you are today, make that decision, say that yes, and move forward from here. So I always say it's never too late ever. Whether you have 5 minutes or the next 50 years to start making those changes, just make the decision today to do it and then start it.
It's never too late. I was going to say, there are so many people who grew up in homes that were not supportive to their natural being.
Yeah.
But now those same parents are the most amazing grandparents, right? I'm sure we've seen this.
Yes.
And then we wonder, okay, are these the same people that raised us? But that's what happens, is everybody in the family evolves. So it's never too late to allow that evolution. And it starts with sometimes one person, and then it really does trickle into being a role model for other members of your family. And when one person starts to heal themselves, that's why I say we never look at what other people are doing, never blame the other. I mean, of course, we do sometimes go to blame of the other people in our family, but we have to start with ourselves. Yeah. And when we do that, we allow a change and a shift in the dynamic of the family dynamic. And then as we start to thrive, either those people, they don't get it, or they might not get it for a short period. Maybe they fall away for a while. Perhaps you love from a distance for a while as you start to tune in and evolve into who you authentically are meant to be.
Yeah.
And eventually, I truly believe the more you heal people around you, and they don't even possibly realize it.
Yeah. That's so true.
Mhm.
You know, what would be your, I don't want to say recommendation, but words of wisdom in the person that's standing in the shower right now? And I'm using your experience, obviously, but they're standing in that place of feeling hopeless and helpless. And they've had it with wherever they're at in their situation, whether it's a relationship they feel they can't get out of, it's a health situation that they've not been able to find a solution to, and their body's tired and their mind's tired. It can be anything, right? Financial, relational,
Yeah.
situational, physical. Where you said you drew hope from your faith. So let's take it as far as to say maybe these individuals don't have that either.
Yes. You
Where
do.
do they find that next piece of something, that next step? Because you have to have enough energy, enough courage, enough strength left to go one more step.
Exactly. And a lot of times you don't have that courage. You've lost that hope. You don't even want to be here anymore at some days. And you wonder how you got into such a deep, dark hole and how are you even going to get out? So I would say the next step is to become aware of your journey. So your journey that brought you to that place. And I really truly believe that there are no mistakes.
Mm.
That your life was not a mistake. Everything happened the way it was meant to happen to bring you to that point.
Yeah.
So some people call it the dark night of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that when you're in that place, the only way to go is through it,
Mm-hmm.
to go through it and understand that the people, the experiences, everything that has happened in your life up to that point was very divinely orchestrated.
Mm-hmm.
And then there comes a point where you hit rock bottom because think about it. If we did not hit those rock bottoms, how would we rise higher than we had ever gone before?
Yeah.
How would we know pain? How would we understand the contrast between the pain and the joy?
Yeah.
We wouldn't know. We wouldn't know or understand when we reach a point of joy or happiness or content what the other side feels like. So we have to learn what the other side feels like. So I definitely say there are no mistakes. Everything has happened for a reason. And now it's time to move through it. And it starts with awareness.
Yeah. And I think the thing I would encourage people in, because that can feel overwhelming also, move through it. I can't even step into it. You know, we as a society try to escape pain. Pain's not fun. Struggle isn't fun. And so we run from it often. And sometimes we do that with medicating. Sometimes we do that with sleep. You know, we have all the different methods that we are running from it.
Mhm.
So I would encourage, you know, when I say one step at a time, you know, one bite at a time,
Yes.
is when we go through things, they take time. And we live in such a come on, let's go society here of at our fingertips in seconds, microseconds, we have answers to things that I think we've stepped away from, and we've overcomplicated the process of life. And no matter what we create in technology, no matter what we create in ways of making life easier, the journey of life in its entirety will never get easier. Life, we're going to bring life in and we're going to lose life and we're going to have struggle all the way through. And so none of these things in the world that are in place make the journey easier. We still have to experience the highs and lows of that. And knowing that it's normal. It's, you know, those of us that looking from the outside, you know, someone looking in on my life might say, oh, she has it all together. 4 kids, you know, she lives in this house, she does this, she does that. She doesn't struggle like I do,
Yeah.
but you don't know what's happening behind closed doors ever. And so I would say, don't jump to conclusions about others that you see in the world.
Yeah.
Don't put this unrealistic expectation of being able to avoid it with a quick fix, because we can't avoid life, right? And the more that we learn to lean into the pain and the struggle and the hurt, the faster we're going to grow.
I love what you said there, Kimberly, because it's so true. And for somebody who's in a dark place, they're like, they can't even imagine getting to the other side because it seems so overwhelming. It seems so hard. And I always say, just as you suggested, it's always one thought. You just choose one thought at a time.
Yeah.
One emotion at a time, and one choice at a time. And it is easy to escape. I used to use sugar, food as an escape mechanism. I used to use sleep because I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I used to think, what's the point? I don't want to feel the pain that I'm feeling physically or emotionally. What's the point? So I would try to sleep as long as I could in my day. And I understand that feeling. So it starts with one thought. And for me, the one thought was, I am willing to change. I am willing to heal.
I like that. I like that. That's great. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to heal. That's good. It's a great affirmation. Something to, put on sticky notes. And in my coaching over the years, I've done, and said many things, mostly things that have worked for me. And having those reminders in my face from the moment I wake up. So if you're somebody that cannot not grab your phone first thing in the morning, then what you should see when you grab your phone is an affirmation just like that when it opens up. So that's the first thing that's entering your brain, not Instagram's latest, greatest, whoever is on there, that's disrupting those thoughts from the very second that you awaken. So having those things in places where you're seeing them over and over and over, because if you get into the neurology, we can recreate pathways. I mean, we really can pour into our brains, even though our feelings might not agree with what we're being told. So I'm saying, affirmation after affirmation, reminder, even though your feelings, that might not feel like something that's going to work, it's something that works in the brain. So just keep doing it.
Exactly. I always teach this to teens and to kids about their neural pathways. And you're always going to have your old programming. It's physically always going to be there. I always say, look at it as these highways in your brain. And if you have a thought that you've been constantly thinking, then that highway is very much traveled on, and it's going to be very strong. And it's going to be your natural default way of thinking.
Yeah.
But when you choose a new thought, you're actually physically creating that pathway in the brain. And the more you think it, the more stronger that pathway is going to get. And then it'll become your default thinking.
Which is really cool. I mean, the body is an amazing machine.
Amazing.
Yeah. So if we just put those things into place. Well, I want to talk a little bit too, because I know we chatted about this, last week when we had a conversation. And, maybe another tool, and it's not a tool. we talked a little bit about women and the role of women in the world, and some of the things that in our experience have been missing that many women would agree on. And so how do we get back to a place where when there's someone in this place, it's not just putting that one foot forward, but it's surrounding yourself with women, whether you know them well or don't know them well, who love and support you because they see your unique gifts. They see the potential in where you can go. They see, and it's strange to say that, because my immediate thinking could have been years ago, well, you don't know me. Why would you ever support anything? Why would you see something in me I can't even see myself? Because when you've taken the journey that we've been on and you've done the work and you're on the other side of it and you yourself have stood in those places, you know what's possible and you see it in everyone. And so let's talk about how do we get back to this place of, I just did it today, not comparing myself, not feeling like I was enough. I was so nervous to get back on here and do this. And it took me the first 5 minutes, if you go back and listen to this episode again, to be truthful and transparent. That wasn't me. And it wasn't me because I was trying to put on what I think the world needs to see of me in order to respect me, see me, think that I'm enough. And the truth is, I am not put together. I'm just not.
And the first step is acknowledging it.
Yes. And I'm never going to be put together. I'm not. I go live and I lose words. It's like my whole brain just wipes itself out.
Same.
Yes. You know, and I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be where when you listen to an episode and you tune in, you feel at home.
Yes.
You feel like you can relate to what we're saying because we can relate to you. And if I just have it all together and I use all the right words and my papers look good and I announce you correctly and all the things go perfect, it leaves the person listening thinking, well, I'm never going to be that perfect.
You know, you're so absolutely right. And that feeling of making other people feel at home is when we start to feel at home with ourselves. And when we start to re-enter, I honestly had to train myself how to learn how to be in my body. Kimberly, it was a major process. And I remember being at a woman's birthday party, and she was turned 50, and I was young at this point, and I was on my healing journey. And one older woman, she must have been in her 60s, and she said to me, "Are you planning on having kids?" And I said, "Yes, I can't wait. I'm definitely planning to have a child." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, you're going to have to get way more grounded than you are in order to have that child."
Okay, what's that mean? No.
I had no idea. No idea what she meant by that. What's this word she's even using? I didn't realize I had been not living in my body, not tuned in. And isn't that what we have been taught in our society? We're not tuned in right now in society. There are so many women who we're always looking for these external sources of validation. And so once you start tuning in, once you start landing back in your body, I used to see a massage therapist and I used to get a lot of body work done because I was always in pain. And at that time, didn't know that she was actually working through a lot of my pain by working on my fascia, which holds a lot of your emotions. Anyways, didn't know any of this at that time. And so when I used to get this body work, she used to say, "Stay in your body." Getting this message from everywhere.
Yeah.
And finally I got it. And that's what it is. It's learning how to be in your body so that you can feel at home and you can actually feel safe. So a lot of the women I coach, they don't even know what the feeling of being safe in their body feels like. And I can completely relate to that.
Yeah, I can also.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of trauma. I mean, trauma puts us into the place where we do. And I use the word, I realized, not too long ago, I had spent my whole life disassociating, which is exactly that. It's taking yourself out of situations.
Yes.
I mean, it's weird to describe now because when I was unconsciously doing it, I didn't realize what I was doing.
Yes.
And when I became aware of what I was doing, it's almost as if I was hovering above every situation. So there was no feeling. It was as if I wasn't experiencing whatever it was that was going on.
Yes, we actually, these are all coping mechanisms that we remove ourselves from our experience. And we're kind of like up here and our body is this physical entity and we're completely separated from it.
Yeah.
So this is why I want to encourage women to get back to feeling at home within themselves. And once you do that, you can meet other women. And it's not even once you do that, it's as you're doing that.
Yes.
Other women, sisterhood, community, relationships are going to help you get back to that place, are going to bring you back home, because we are naturally wired to be safe and to be social.
Mm.
And that is our way of being. When we are in a regulated state, we feel connected to others, and that connection is so healing.
Yeah.
And sisterhood and women getting together, women used to get together in circles and moon circles and all these different cultural circles around the world. And so we've kind of lost that. And so that's why I am so grateful at this point to have a community, many communities of women in my life. And one thing I want to touch on is, growing up, a lot of us women, we experience trust issues. So it's difficult to learn how to trust other women. It's a
Yes.
process. And it's something that I had to work on for myself, because at one point you may even start to think that women, let you down, they become jealous, they're always envious. That was my experience back in the day. But now I feel like there are so many women around me that I can love and support and trust.
Yeah.
And I feel safe around, and I can be myself.
Yeah. And I think part of that, I always see the circle of, trusting yourself. And for me, it's been, I have my faith is strong also. And so, I look at this, trusting myself, trusting God, and it's a circle, right? And I would enter in, women into that circle. It's hard to trust other women when you don't trust yourself. And so asking yourself that question every day, can I trust myself today? Not can I trust her today? Because when you work from here, it's a whole different game. It really is. We've been, I met you through social media, which is ironic because I have ran from social media the last couple of years. I had a very negative outlook on it. I know in my mind it's a great tool. It can be used in wonderful ways, but I resisted, being on it, in it. I post a lot about my family and I stay away from everything else. And I had, made the decision a couple of months ago. No, I want to create authentic connections with women, not just around our country or community, but around our nation and then worldly. And I think it can be done. And so I entered that space with a different heart. And I am going to have women that absolutely, because of where they're at, they're going to see or interpret me reaching out, wanting to support them as, what does she want? But then I get to prove over and over and over where my heart is. And I get to start to build that bridge of trust with every woman that I'm connecting with.
I love that. I love what you said, and see how it started with a mindful intention.
Yeah.
So an intention to form authentic connections. And that's what happened with me. Is I set these intentions throughout my healing journey that allowed me to take the next step. So when we went back to that part about what's the next step when you're in this deep, dark place, and that awareness, it's starting with one thought, starting with one intention.
Yes. Yes. I love that. So we're approaching the end. I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing today. What opportunities do women have to work with you? If there are individuals listening that have teenagers and, they want to get their teens involved in the work that you're doing, let's talk about where we can find you and some of the things that you're currently offering. You also have a podcast, so I want you to speak a little bit about that. So the listeners have a place to find you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I have two offerings at the moment. One is private coaching. And so I coach teen girls in order for them to help them feel calmer again, to work with their mindset, to work with their unresolved emotions. So moms usually approach me when they've entered into their own spiritual awakening or their own journey of healing. And then they realize that they want their daughter to have the same empowerment. But of course, our teenagers are wired to move away from us during teenage years, which is actually biologically what they do, because they're learning we want them to move on and to move away from the tribe, move away from the family. So that's why our teenagers move away from us sometimes during teenage years, because that's what they're wired to do, because they're trying to strive for this independence so they can go into adulthood. And so moms approach me when their daughters are, struggling with things like anxiety, maybe friendships, maybe their habits are not conducive to helping them to succeed in school or out of school. Maybe they have some relationship issues or unresolved emotions and incidents that have hurt them that they need to process. There's a variety of things, even eating. A lot of times, some teenagers have eating disorders or problems with food, problems with connecting with themselves. Sometimes they have depression. So there's a variety of things that the teenagers are going through. But the moms recognize through their own journeys that they want their daughter to be empowered, to be healthy, to be confident, to become resilient. And sometimes it's moods, sometimes it's problems with their menstrual cycles. So that's my one-on-one private coaching. And then I have a group empowerment program. Now, I also want to add, in my one-on-one coaching, I used to only coach the daughters, but now as part of my package, I also include coaching with the mothers, because I realize when they are happening simultaneously, it's very, very helpful, and it helps both the mother and the daughter to thrive.
Yeah.
And so the group coaching program is a 6-week mother-daughter empowerment initiation. And in that program, we go through, I do the same curriculum for the moms and the same curriculum for the daughters. And they're both in separate classes. And we cover the mind-body connection, and we cover optimal nutrition and lifestyle, because nutrition is such a big part of it, and learning how to have habits that are going to be healthy enough to help us to feel vital and to feel good and to feel emotionally well. And we cover stress management techniques. We cover techniques in order to resolve your emotions. And we cover in that peers and friendships. And that's when we talk about sisterhood and women coming together to support each other, because a lot of young girls don't have that example.
Yeah.
And so we talk about that because we're planting the seed to let them know, listen, your high school years do not have to be a series of mean girl incidents.
Right.
Right. And then the last module in the 6 weeks is empowered communication. So teaching them how to speak up for themselves, what to say in certain situations, type of language to use. And so there's a variety of communication methods that we cover. And then the moms group, I also do live hot seat coaching in there. So it's a virtual program. And I do have my last cohort, I had moms and daughters from the US as well. I had some from Canada. And I'm actually getting ready in a week and a half to do an in-person session in my community. And as for the podcast, there's so much to share. So as you know,
yes, there is.
That's what we want to do. We want to empower others. We want to help others. And my podcast is called I Am Mom. And it stands for actionable and meaningful steps to create the magical life that you desire for you and your family. And I'm all about creating the empowered family and creating an environment where everyone in the family can thrive.
I love that. Do you have a link
Yes.
A website. Okay. Do you want to share that? And we can throw that up. And then I'll add it to social media so that if people listen to this, after and want to find that, we can share that again.
Thank you. So my website is mindfulevolution.ca.
Okay.
My Instagram account is dimple.holisticlifecoach. And if you go to mindfulevolution.ca/offer, you can download my 4 pillars to optimize mental health.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm super excited for individuals to be able to connect with you. You have so much wisdom, so much to share. And we so need this in the world with young girls. And communication, as you were talking, I mean, the lack of communication in the world today, everything's online, being able to hide behind comments and, our computers and we're just not communicating in the same ways anymore. So I think this is a key piece in, really teaching these young people as they get older. And communication is something that we need, and we need to be able to do it well. So that's powerful.
Yes, because how many times have we looked back and thought, oh, I wish I said it this way, or I wish I said that. And there have been situations, I'm sure, for you as well, and for many women out there, where when we were young, we were in environments, perhaps work environments, and we just muted ourselves.
Yes.
When we should have been speaking up.
Yes. And it's the balance between both. It's losing the voice and then finding the voice. And it's that, quiet versus very reactive. And there's a powerful way to use your voice without offending, without, very powerful way.
Yes.
So,
with grace and with empathy. I always say grace and empathy will get you take you a very long way.
Yes, it does. It does. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It's been such a joy and a pleasure. I love everything about you. I definitely instant connection when we chatted last week. So, and listeners, I want to thank you for being here today. Also tuning in at this time. Please check out Dimple's website, the offerings that she has. If it's not for you specifically at this time, because you don't have a daughter that's a teen, but somebody that does, share her information, share the work that she's doing in the world, check out her podcast, and join us live every Thursday here on Aging Like a Badass at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Have a great week and a happy Easter.
Happy Easter. And thank you so much, Kimberly. You are an amazing woman, and I love what you're offering the world. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
This is Kimberly Price, your 40-something host of Aging Like a Badass. See you every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4WN Radio, as we come together to break the rules, ignore the critics, and age like a badass.